So we're now going to continue with part 2 of our Torah portion of Vayechi. And as we continue in chapter 49, so that we have now laid this foundation. I just believe, I really wasn't expecting to go that deep, but I believe that the Father is the one who really wanted me to be able to go deep in understanding this, because we need to have our identity in understanding our identities in Messiah. And our Messiah has led us in order to be able to come back to a house from where we have fallen. And if we do not understand the identity that the Father is bringing us back into a house, I need you to understand, you are a prodigal son that is come back into a house, and your Father has embraced you, and He's put a robe on you, a robe of authority. He's given you a ring of the covenant. He's given you the shoes of the gospel of the good news for you to go forth. He's killed the fatted calf because you are a son. And your job is to make sure that you're going to provoke those out there to jealousy. Not, you're supposed to be provoking Yehudah, but even if you're not provoking Yehudah, there needs to be something different about you, even amongst the Christians. And so we've got to come from a different perspective, and we need to be able to embrace what the Father is doing in our lives, because there's just too many people running around. And this is why we start going into, again, building another religion, because now we want to look like Jews. It's not just looking like Jews. We want to be able to think that now we need, let me rephrase that. It's wanting to now come into Judaism, because I need to find where I belong. I need an identity of my belonging, because it's like all of a sudden I feel I don't have an identity. You have an identity. Your identity is in Messiah, Yahushua Mashiach, and you follow the Lamb wherever He goes, and He's the one who brings you back into the house to sing the song of Moshe. And then you follow the Lamb. And this is what we need. So we are going to pick up on chapter 49, very powerful chapter for us to be able to look into this chapter. And it starts with chapter 1, and it says, and this is why I just want to work through this, because this is very much prophetic. And that is why we can't just skim through this. We need to be able to look at it in a little bit more detail. And Yaakov called his sons and said, gather together so that I declare to you what is to befall you in the last days. So that, make a note of that, what has to befall you in the last days. So therefore, we are in the last days, and therefore we should be seeing this play out before us. We should understand, because Jacob was saying, these are the days ahead. In the days ahead, this is going to be able to come forth. So this is a prophecy for now. It's not just a prophecy for then. So gather together and hear, you sons of Yaakov, and listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn. Okay, so Reuben. What does Reuben mean? So Reuben means, behold a son. So Joshua became a son. Behold, a son was born. Behold, my firstborn, my power, and the beginning of my strength. He was the Aleph, Abba is the Aleph, and he is the Tav. Joshua was the firstborn of the incorruptible seed that came from the Father. And he is the beginning of the Father's strength, the excellency of exaltation and the excellency of power. So he was to be the excellency of the Father's exaltation, the excellency of the Father's power. He was the firstborn. He is seated at the right hand of the Father, and he is the one that says, behold, a son was born, the Son of righteousness. So that is the firstborn, and we look at this because every name ties back to Joshua. So this is what Joshua was. But what happened to Reuben? Boiling like water you did not excel, because you went up to your father's bed, and then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. So this is exactly what Reuben did. So when we look at Genesis chapter 35, verses 22, we're not going to go there. Reuben slept with Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant. And this is what he's saying. So he was boiling like a water. Why? Boiling like water. Why? Because he was boiling over with lust. And so this is what the tribe of Reuben does. Burns with lust. And so those that are the Reubenites need to guard for the lust, especially the lust of sexual immorality in their lives. Shimon. So if we take Shimon, what does Shimon mean? Shimon means hear, to listen, to obey. From Shama, listen and obey. So Joshua is the firstborn. He's the first one that came to teach us to listen and to obey, to Shama, to hear and to obey. So he's brought us back to him so that we may listen and so that we may obey. He's given us eyes to see, he's given us ears to hear, he's given us that ability to hear and obey by giving us the Ruach. And so that is Shimon. So Shimon comes from Shama, which is to listen and obey. Levi is joined to, so let's just listen to it. So Shimon and Levi, so Levi is joined to. So Abba gave us Joshua to be joined to us. So Abba has given us, so let's look and see, he is, behold, a son that came to hear and to obey, and that is going to be joined to Judah, which is the praise and the shout. So he's joined to a shoot. He's the shoot that's going to come forth. He's the praise. He's the praise of all the earth. But let's look and see what it says from Shimon and Levi, our brothers. Their weapons were implements of violence. Let my being not enter their council. Let my esteem not be united to their assembly, because they killed a man in their displeasure, and they lamed an ox in pleasure. Cursed be their displeasure, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I divided them in Yaakov, and scattered them in Israel. So at the end of the day, what happened even with the Levites, the tribe of Levi was totally scattered in the end. The tribe of Levi eventually got totally scattered, and today Father will raise up a new priesthood. He's going to raise up a new priesthood, because the priesthood that came, the priesthood that is now going to come, is going to be a priesthood in the order of Melchizedek, because he's going to scatter. He said he would scatter Levi. He said he was going to be able to scatter Levi. So at the end of the day, now if we look and see, where's the priesthood of this Levitical priesthood? It's not there anymore. He will still have a Levitical priesthood through the order of Yahushua, because Yahushua became the high priest when he was anointed through John the Immerser, that was supposed to have been high priest. Remember, who was in line to be the high priest from Zechariah would have been John the Immerser, John the Baptist, Yehuchanan. And Yehuchanan is the one who basically baptized, who immersed Yahushua. And Yahushua comes from a Levitical tribe in terms of his mother, because Mary and Elizabeth were cousins, and they both came from the tribe of Levi. But from the father's side, he comes from Yehudah. And so do you understand? He's still in the order of Levitical priesthood, but he's going to stand up in Yehudah as being the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So then we have a look at Judah. Yehudah is a lion cub. Let's see. And you, Yehudah, your brothers praise you. Your hand is on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children bow down before you. So you see, your brothers praise you. So all the tribes of the earth will bow before Yehudah. Why? Because at the end of the day, it was Yehudah that was chosen to be the kingly tribe. So from Yehudah was going to come the kings. So the very first king was Saul. That was the king over Israel. But Saul was removed because he came from Benjamin. But remember, Benjamin and Judah were one tribe eventually. But then he rose up David, and David came from the tribe of Yehudah. And from there became the tribe of the kings, from the line of Judah, not from the line of Benjamin, because the father removed Saul because of his wolf attitude in the end of the day. So he says, your brothers praise you. Your hand is on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children bow down before you. So you see here, we see how Judah is going to be praised up, is going to be raised up. And Judah means praise, means shoot. And we read then, and it says, and your hand is on the neck of your enemies. So it's very interesting, because through this tribe, the enemy is going to be destroyed. It's through the tribe of Judah that the enemy will be destroyed. Why will the enemy be destroyed through the tribe of Judah? Because at the end of the day, the enemy is the devil, and Yahushua has been given the scepter, and he is the Lion of the tribe of Yehudah, who is the one worthy to open the scrolls that's going to destroy the enemy. But there was already a prophecy spoken in Numbers chapter 24. Just let's go look at Numbers chapter 24 verses 17. So let's go to Numbers chapter 24 and let's read Numbers verse 17. This is prophetic, and it says, I see him, but not now. I observe him, but not near. A star shall come out of Yaakov, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and shall destroy all the sons of Seth. And so there you go. Who is this one with the scepter? None other than the Lion of the tribe of Judah that is going to smite his enemies. And so in Revelation chapter 5 verses 5, let's go look at Revelation chapter 5 verses 5. In Revelation chapter 5 verses 5 it says, and one of the elders said to me, do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Yehudah, the root of David, overcame to open the scroll and to loosen its 7 seals. And I looked, and I saw in the midst of the throne of the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders, a lamb standing, and having been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of Elohim sent out into all the earth. So this is the Lion of the tribe of Judah that is going to be worthy to open the scroll, and he is going to destroy the enemy. So if we look at Isaiah chapter 42, so let's just look at Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 42 verses 1 to 4, and it says, "See, my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one, my being is delighted in. I put my spirit upon him. He brings forth right ruling to the nations." Who is that? Yahushua, the one who's given the scepter, the one who's given the authority. He's the Lion of the tribe of Yehudah. He does not cry out nor lift up his voice, nor causes his voice to be heard in the street. A crushed reed he does not break. So you see, this is speaking now from Isaiah chapter 53, when he became a crushed reed. A crushed reed he does not break, and smoking flax he does not quench. He brings forth right ruling in accordance with truth. So see, he is truth. That's why he says, "I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life." He is truth. Everything about Yahushua is bringing us back into truth and right ruling. And he does not become weak or crushed until he establishes right ruling in the earth, and the coastlands wait for his Torah. So do you see, those in the dispersion are waiting for his Torah, because Yahushua is the living Torah. He is the living Torah made manifest in the flesh. So how do we say we don't want to keep Torah when Yeshua himself is the living Torah, and when the coastlands, those in the coastlands, those in the dispersion are waiting for his Torah? Daniel chapter 7. Let's go to Daniel. This is where he's got a kingdom. Daniel chapter 7 from verses 13. And it says, "I was looking in the night vision, and one like the son of Enosh, coming with the clouds of the heavens, and he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And to him was given rulership and preciousness, and a reign that all peoples, nations, languages should serve him. His rule is an everlasting rule which shall not pass away, and his reign that which shall not be destroyed." And that is our Messiah, Yahushua. And that is where his kingdom, he is the king of all the earth, and this is the Lion of the tribe, and this is the tribe of Yehudah. So understand, the tribe of Yehudah is what the Father is busy showing in terms of Judah having to raise up. So he says, Yehudah is a lion's cub from the prey. So he's the Lion of the tribe of Yehudah. "And you have gone up, my son." He bowed down, he crouched like a lion, and like a lion who does rouse him. "The scepter shall not turn aside from Yehudah." So you see, he was given the scepter, and that is what we saw in Numbers chapter 24, verses 17. And so it says, Yehudah, the lion's cub, "The scepter shall not turn aside from Yehudah, nor an inscriber from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him is the obedience of peoples." So you see, Shiloh, what is Shiloh? Shiloh is where all the 12 tribes were gathered in Shiloh, and that is where the Father's presence, that is where Father's presence dwelt for more than 300 years in a tabernacle. And so we are to have the restoration of the tabernacle of David that is to come, and to him all the obedience of the people. So you see, until Shiloh comes. What is Shiloh? Shiloh was it Shiloh, Shiloh. Shiloh was exactly where the tent of meeting was, where the Father's presence was, where the tabernacle dwelt. And so what does it say in Acts? Let's just go to Acts chapter 17. Acts chapter 15. Acts chapter 15. In Acts chapter 15, from verses 14, it says, "Shimon has declared how Eloah first visited the nations to take out of them a people for his name." So he's taking out of them a people for his name. And the words of the prophets agree with this, as it has been written. After I shall return and rebuild the booth of David, so the tabernacle of David. That was where the tabernacle was dwelling in Shiloh, which has fallen down, and I shall rebuild its ruins, and I shall set it up, so that the remnant of mankind shall seek Yahuwah. There you see, the remnant of mankind is going to seek Yahuwah, because he's going to gather the nations to be able to once again seek Abba Yahuwah. He's the one who's going to lead us and guide us into all truth, even all the nations on whom my name has been called, says Yahuwah, who is doing this, who has made this known from of old. Therefore I judge that we should not trouble those from among the nations who are turning to Eloah. So at the end of the day, this is what it's saying when it's talking about that the scepter shall not turn aside from Yehudah, nor an inscriber from between his feet, until Shiloh comes. The tabernacle of David is going to be restored, and to him is the obedience of peoples. So the people are going to all become obedient, because he's going to bring us back to him and to his way. Binding his donkey to the vine, and his donkey colt to the choice vine, he washed his garments in wine, and his robes in the blood of grapes. And so if we have a look and we see in Zechariah 9 verses 9, let's quickly go to Zechariah 9 verses 9. In Zechariah 9 verses 9 it says, Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. See, your sovereign is coming to you. He is righteous and endowed with deliverance. So he's bringing right ruling, he's bringing his righteous ways, and he's endowed with deliverance, his salvation, deliverance, healing, humble, and riding on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey. And so this is when Yeshua, in John chapter 12, so if we go have a look at John chapter 12, so let's just go to John chapter 12. John chapter 12, verses 12 to 16, and it says, On the next day, a great crowd had come to the festival when they heard that Yahushua was coming to Jerusalem, took the branches of palm trees and went out to meet him, and were crying out, Hoshiana! Blessed is he who is coming in the name of Yahuwah, the sovereign of Israel. And Yahushua, having found a young donkey, sat on it, as it was written. Do not fear, daughter of Zion. See, your sovereign is coming, sitting on a colt of a donkey. At first his taught ones did not understand this, but when Yeshua was esteemed, then they remembered that this was written about him, and that they had done this to him. So you see, the books of the prophets, the books of the Torah, talk about our Messiah, and everything needs to be brought into the light, because Messiah Yahushua opened their eyes to understand the scriptures that were speaking about him, and then they remembered that this was written in Zechariah 9 verses 9. So then we have a look, and it says where it says that, and the choice vine, he washed his garments in wine, and his robes in the blood of the grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. And so if we have a look at Revelation chapter 1, verses 5, let's go look at what it says in Revelation 1, verses 5, and it says, And from Yahushua Messiah, the trustworthy witness, the firstborn from the dead, and the ruler of the sovereigns of the earth, to him who loved us and washed us from our sins in his own blood. So you see, Yahushua is the one that is the Lion of the tribe of Yehudah, the one that has the scepter to rule, the one that was going to rule, the one that was going to be the inscriber of the Torah, the inscriber of the law. You will understand this. And therefore, He is the one who is going to be able to wash us from our sins, our lawlessness, with His own blood, so that no longer does these lawlessness things count against us, but that now by His Ruach we have His Torah written on tablets of our hearts, and now we have no excuse but to be able to walk it out. So praise Abba Yahuwah. And so now we continue to look at Zebulun. Zebulun dwells in the seashore. He is for a haven for ships, and his border is unto Zion. So what does Zebulun mean? Zebulun means exalted. Habitation also means to exalt, to dwell, to reside, to dwell with. So Yeshua was exalted to the heavens. He is our habitation. He's the one in whom we have habitation. He is the one that we will dwell with. He is the one that dwells with us, and He's the one that is to be exalted. Issachar. Issachar is strong donkey, lying between two burdens, and he saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant, and he inclined his shoulder to bear a burden, and became a subject to slave labor. And so Issachar means there is recompense. From the root He will bring reward, to lift up, to bear, support, sustain. So you see, as Yeshua died and resurrected, He brings recompense. He's the one from the root. He will bring the reward. He will lift us up. He will bear. He was lifted up. He was the one that received the reward. He's the one seated at the right hand of the Father. He's the one that comes to support and to sustain us. Dan rightly rules his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan is a serpent by the way, and the adder by the path, that bites the horse's heel, so that its rider falls back. I have waited for your deliverance, O Yahuwah. So, at the end of the day, Dan was supposed to be a judge. Dan was supposed to be one that was supposed to judge righteously. But what happened with Dan? Dan, in the end, became one that was a serpent. And so Dan, in the end, Dan means to judge, to contend, and to plead. So Yeshua became our judge. He becomes the one who contends for us, and He's the one who pleads for us. But Dan rightly rules his people as one of the tribes of Israel. That's what he was supposed to do. But as we look at Samson, Samson was a judge, and Samson came from the tribe of Dan, and he was a judge yet fell. Why? He succumbed to what? He succumbed to Delilah. So if we look at the tribe of Dan, he was supposed to be Samson came from the tribe of Dan, and he was a judge. And we read that in Judges 13:2. So in Judges 13 verse 2, I'm not going to go read that, but in Judges 13 verse 2, and we look and we see how he became a traitor with Delilah, that he sold out he allowed the serpent to come and bite him by being able to give his secrets away to a woman because of the lust of the flesh. And so because of the lust of the flesh, he became a traitor, and he sold out his people. But in the end, he died for them again. So the tribe of Dan also brought idolatry into Israel. So the tribe of Dan eventually brought idolatry into Israel. And isn't it interesting? So if we have a look at Judges, I'm not going to go there now, but Judges 13:5, 24 to 25, here we see that he was a judge that fell. This is Samson. And then in Judges 16 verses 1 and 4, he was he was ruled by his flesh nature when he fell to Delilah. And then in Judges 18 verses 30 to 31, they set up carved images. So they are the ones that eventually, and it's interesting because it's in Tal Dan, it's in the area of Dan, where they built another temple there and eventually went into total idolatry. And so it's interesting because the tribe of Dan is not mentioned in the 12 tribes in Revelation chapter 7. Dan is not mentioned. Gad is a raiding band, raids him, but he raids its heel. So Gad is troop to invade and to attack. Abba will be the one, Yahushua is the one who fights for us, and we will hold our peace. He's the one who's going to invade. He's the one that will attack. He's the one that will raise up a troop, but he is the one who is our defender. Asher. Bread from Asher is rich. So Asher means happy, blessed, to be made happy. And that's Yeshua. He's the blessed. He's the one that makes us blessed. He's the one that will make us happy. And he's the one that is blessed, and he's the one that is happy. And so Asher is rich, and he gives delicacies of a sovereign. And so Asher means happy, blessed. Naphtali, a deer let loose, he gives words of elegance. So Naphtali means wrestling, to wrestle. So Yeshua is the one who wrestled with Yaakov, changed his name, changed his identity. So as we wrestle with Yeshua, so we too will be changed in our identity. Then there is Yosef. Yosef, Yahuwah has added. To add, to increase, to join to add to, be added to. He will have added to him. So the Father will have added to him, and the Father did add to him because the Father gave him to be able to have double portion. And so Ephraim, he gave him, and so you've got Yosef, and Yosef is an offshoot of the fruit bearer, of the fruit-bearing tree, an offshoot of fruit-bearing tree by a fountain. His branches run over a wall, and the archers have bitterly grieved him, shot at him, and hated him. And this is what he was. He was called to be able to be a fruit-bearer, an offshoot, a fruit-bearing tree for his brothers and for his family. And so, the house of Israel, when Father called Jeroboam was chosen by the Father to bring the house of Israel into righteousness. Where the house of Judah was going astray, Father was going to raise up Jeroboam to be able to make sure that this house would not be defiled by the lust of the flesh of Jeroboam. And so the Father chose Jeroboam to be able to be a leader. But he allowed jealousy. He allowed fear to grip him, because instead of him trusting that the Father is the one who raised him up and waited on the Father to be able to do what needed to be done, he didn't want the people to go and worship in Jerusalem. He wanted to go and build his own temple, and eventually he went more and more astray until eventually he even started to do feasts in his own times. Instead of him doing the feasts in the 7th month, he started keeping the feasts in the 8th month, and this is where Jeroboam completely went astray. And so I see the house of Joseph as being, Joseph receives a firstborn blessing almost, as Reuben would have, because he was the firstborn of his mother Rachel. And so he's receiving like the firstborn blessing, and that's why he gets double portion. But Joseph went through much, and therefore Father will recompense him, because through Joseph's obedience, the entire house of Israel will be saved. And Joseph becomes a type of Yahushua. And so therefore Father puts an absolute blessing on Joseph. So out of Joseph comes Ephraim, and Ephraim is supposed to be the house that is the whole house of Israel, of those that will eventually go astray, just like Joseph went astray, just like Joseph went into the nation of Mitzrayim, just like the prodigal son went into the nations, just like Joseph went into the nation, and he wasn't with his father's house. So Joseph is a type of foreshadow of this house of Israel that went astray. But when it comes back, he was going to be used, and this is why the lost tribes of the house of Israel that are coming back, they are the ones of this prodigal son that's going to carry the mantle to open the eyes of the eldest brother Judah, to come in, and for those of the nations to come in. And so that's why he says, an offshoot of a fruit-bearing tree, by a fountain, his branches run over a wall. Because he will have the fountains of the living water that he is to give, like he was the one that was feeding the nations. So those that are going to raise up of Ephraim, that's an offshoot from Joseph, are going to then feed the nations with the gospel of the truth. Because right now, Judah is now the ones that are, they have not received Messiah, where Ephraim and the lost tribes have received Messiah, and they are grafted in, and they are not arrogant and filled with pride, and they are submitting, and they will become those that will provoke brother Judah to jealousy. And the archers have bitterly grieved him and shot at him and hated him. And so you see his own brothers hated him and shot at him. And so it's going to be where they will go astray by Ephraim, that's going to go into the nations eventually. But his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty one of Yaakov. So you see, the Father is the one who's going to make them strong by everything that they've been through. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. So understand, they will stand on the rock and the stone of Israel, Yahushua HaMashiach. From the owl of your Father, who helps you, and by the Almighty who blesses you, with blessing of the heavens from above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breasts of the womb. So this house will be blessed, and they will receive much blessing from the Father because of the fact that they have gone astray. And the same as Joseph was the one who went astray, but when Joseph comes back, he receives double portion from his children being part of the house. They are on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of him who was separated from his brothers. So you see, the same as the house of Israel has been separated from the house of Judah, separated from the Torah, separated from that which should have, they should have been part of this house, but they got separated. But the Father is going to bring them back, and then he's going to separate them. Those that are going to come back, like Joseph, even though he was separated, he came back with a blessing. And so that separated means that so Joseph was brought back, just like the prodigal son was lost. Joseph will bring forth Ephraim, that will be part of the lost tribes, that will be cut off and then brought back and consecrated to the Father. Because why? Because that separated means consecrated, set apart, Nazarite, dedicated. So in Joseph was the blessing to be separated, consecrated, set apart, a Nazarite that would be separated unto the Father. And through Joseph would come Manasseh and Ephraim. Ephraim meaning I shall be doubly fruitful, fruitfulness, and Manasseh meaning I cause to forget. So he will cause him to forget everything that he went through when he was in the nations dispersed, cut from his identity, and then he will be restored and he will become doubly fruitful because he receives. The prodigal son will then receive the robe, the ring, the shoes of authority. So praise Abba Yahuwah. And then there is Benjamin. And Benjamin, we see, is the son of my right hand. So Yoshua is the one who is the son of my right hand. And so Yosef also is meaning added to. Yoshua has been added to us to bring us into the nation, to bring us out of the nation. So understand, that's why I'm saying Joseph means added to. So Joseph is the one that the Father used through Ephraim to add us to Yoshua, to be able to come back to the fullness of covenant with the Father. So Benjamin is the son of my right hand, so Yoshua becomes the son of the Father's right hand. And he's compared to a ravenous wolf who is mighty in battle, but cruel. So he's like a ravenous wolf who is mighty in battle. Oh, he knows how to go into battles, just like it was with Saul. And that's why even if you see King Saul, King Shaul, and Saul, who people call Paul, he was very zealous. He had the believers put to death right in the beginning. He stoned Stephen to death. So there's a cruelty in them. And so a wolf that tears, in the morning he eats prey, and at night he divides the spoil. And so all these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father spoke to them. And he blessed them. He blessed each one according to his own blessing. And so Benjamin, like I said, we see in 1 Samuel 9, verses 1 to 2, King Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin. And if we look at Saul, what did Saul do? Father told him what to do, Samuel told him what to do, and instead, what was he? He was rebellious. He says, your rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, because in him is the wolf nature. So he's dressed in sheep's clothes, but he's a wolf by nature. And so that is why King Saul, in the end, was doing what was right, but at the same time there was that wolf nature in him to be able to devour the prey for himself. He wanted to be seen by the people. And so it was with Saul until the father had to make him blind for 3 days. And so this is the way Father will then speak to his people. So in 1 Samuel 9, verses 1 to 2, King Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin. And in Romans 11, verse 1, Paul is of the tribe of Benjamin. And so now we see, we continue to just look at the story where I'm not going to read it all, but eventually Yaakov dies, and they are going to take him. Chapter 50, they take him, and verse 8, it says, and all the house of Joseph and his brothers and his father's house, only their little ones and their flocks and their herds, they left in the land of Goshen, and they went up with him, both chariots and horsemen, and it was very great company, and they take him to Canaan, verse 13, for his sons brought him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham brought with the field from Ephron the Hittite as property for the burial site. So here Yosef and his brothers bury Yaakov in the tomb where he lays with his fathers. And then, if we have a look then in verses 17, and so by the time we get to verse 15, Genesis, we read 15, all of a sudden in verses 15, and when Yosef's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, what if Yosef hates us and pays us back all the evil which we did to him? And they sent word to Yosef, saying, before your father died, he commanded, saying, this is what you are to say to Yosef, I beg you, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of Eloah for your father. And Yosef wept when they spoke to him. You see, at the end of the day, this is always what happens. You know, when the enemy will always remind us of our past. I mean, by this time they've been living together how long? What all has Yosef done for them? Yosef has provided for them. Yosef could have destroyed them already, irrespective of their father. Yosef could have destroyed them. But look at and see the weakness of the flesh. That all of a sudden now in their flesh, they are now fearing. And this, how many times the enemy will come and bring our past before us and make us want to stumble in our past. And so, this is exactly what happens here. And so, in verses 19 it says, and Yosef said to them, do not fear, for am I in the place of Eloah? Am I in the place of Eloah? He knew Father's will. He knew what the Father did. He couldn't argue with the Father, and he said, and you intended evil against me. You intended evil against me, but Eloah intended it for good, in order to do it as it is this day, to keep a great many people alive. Beloveds of the King, you should understand that the scripture today should speak volumes in your life. The next time when you are finding yourself going through your most difficult time in your life and nothing in your life makes sense, remember, what the enemy means for bad in your life, which you only see bad, and you cannot see the end of the result on the other side. I want you to understand that all things work together for good, for those that love Abba Yahuwah and are called according to his purpose, Romans 8:28 says. And so you don't know the end of the story, and this is what the Father has said to me so many times when I myself was going through such difficult times, and I used to say, oh, my Father, and I would weep and weep before him. And he would say to me, my child, I'm not finished with your story. Please understand, just like Joseph, I wasn't finished with his story. I'm not finished with your story. I'm still writing your story. And so we must understand that everything that we get put through, sufferings and hardship at the end of the day, we must understand it's to keep a great many people alive, because we are supposed to be a witness. We are supposed to be a testimony for others. And whatever it is that we go through is not for ourselves alone, but also for others, to be a testimony and a witness for him for others. So please, next time you find yourself going through that extreme test and that suffering or that persecution or whatever it is that the Father's putting you through, please be reminded that the Father has a purpose and a plan in all of this. He really, really does. Because this is exactly what happened here. And so then in Genesis chapter 50, verses 19 to 22, we carry on reading. And now do not fear. I provide for you and your little ones. So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. And Yosef dwelt in Mitzrayim, he and his father's house. And Yosef lived 110 years. And then verse 24, and Yosef said to his brothers, I am dying, but Eloah shall certainly visit you and bring you out of this land to the land of which he swore to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. And Yosef made his children of Israel swear, saying, Eloah shall certainly visit you, and you shall bring up my bones from here. And so Joseph dies, and when the children of Israel now leave by the time we're going to get to the next Torah portion of Exodus, the children of Israel are going to leave the land of Israel after 400 years, more than 400 years that they are in captivity. They leave, but when they leave, they take the bones of Joseph. And by the grace of Abba Yahuwah, we were very blessed to have been at the tomb of Joseph's tomb, where his bones rest in a place called, today it is Nablus in the West Bank, but it was known as Shechem. And how interesting it is that it is in the very place of Shechem where the tribes were split. So where Joseph's bones lay is the very place where the house was split, the house of Israel and the house of Ephraim. The house of Judah and the house of Israel, Ephraim, were split. And that is the very place where Joseph's bones lie. And so we are going to look now at the Haftorah. So let's go look at 1 Kings as we just come to an end of this Torah portion. So we are going to look at 1 Kings chapter 2, and we are going to read from verses 1 to verses 4. And this is where we really, really need to be able to get an understanding of what we need to understand. And the days of David drew near to die, and he commanded Shlomo his son, saying, I am going the way of all the earth, and you shall be strong, and be a man, and guard the charge of Yahuwah. Listen to what the Father says to King Solomon. Shlomo. Now understand, David was the one who came from the tribe of the line of Yehudah. From Yehudah was to be given the scepter of where the brothers are going to bow before him. So from the bloodline of Yehudah was to come the kings. So it wasn't going to come from Benjamin, from Saul. It was going to come from Yehudah, because Yehudah was given the scepter, and Yehudah was given the inscriber of the law, and he was going to be able to be given the scepter, and he was going to be the lion, and he was going to be able to have dominion, and he was going to deliver. And this is everything that David does. He delivers his people, and his brothers bow to him. All the tribes bow to him, because eventually King David becomes king over all 12 tribes of the house of Israel. And it's until Solomon that the 12 tribes are still together. And by the time we get to, because they did not adhere to what is written here, the tribes got split. So he says in verse 3, and guard the charge of Yahuwah your Lord, to walk in his ways, to guard his laws, his commands, his right rulings, his witnesses, as it is written in the Torah of Moshe, so that you do wisely all that you do and whatever you turn. So that Yahuwah does establish his word, which he spoke concerning me, saying, if your sons guard their way to walk before me in truth, with all their heart, and with all their being, saying, there is not to cease to be a man of yours on the throne of Israel. So that was the promise that was done to David, that there was not to cease to be a man on the throne of David. And this king on this line was to be able to adhere to what? To guard the charge of Yahuwah, your Elohim, to walk in his ways, to guard his laws, his commands, his right rulings, his witnesses, as it is written in the Torah of Moshe, so that you do wisely all that you do and whatever you turn, so that you can stay in that line. It says, so that Yahuwah does establish his word, which he spoke concerning me, saying, if your sons guard their way to walk before me in truth, with all their heart and with all their being, saying, there is not to cease a man of yours on the throne of Israel. So how on earth is Yeshua going to be a king in the line of Yehudah and nail the law to the cross and say, there's no more law, it's all done away with? How would he be able to be king? This was the order given to Judah. Judah was to rule with a scepter. Judah was to be king, and he was to make sure that they would guard the charge of Yahuwah. So Yahushua became the fullness of Torah in the flesh, so that never again we would have an excuse not to keep it, because now he gives us the Ruach of Yahuwah that writes it on tablets of our hearts, that causes us to walk it out. Please hear this. How does Yahushua, this Jesus that the Christians believe, nail the law to the cross? He could not be a king in the line of Judah, because this was the promise made, and he is the inscriber of that law. So, and guard the charge of Yahuwah your Lord, to walk in his ways, to guard his laws, his commands, his right rulings, his witnesses, as it is written in the Torah of Moshe, so that you do wisely. And the days of David's reign over Israel was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron, and in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years. Interesting. Yeshua lived 33 years. And so for 33 years, David lived in Jerusalem and was king over the house. And he reigned in Jerusalem, and Yeshua was 33 years of age when he died. And Shlomo sat on the throne of his father David, and his reign was firmly established. And so the Father then makes covenant with him. And listen to what he says. So in chapter 3, verse 13, chapter 3, verses 13, and I shall also give you what you have not asked, both riches and esteem. And there shall not be anyone like you among the sovereigns all your days. And if, please make note, if, and if you walk in my ways to guard my laws and my commands, as your father David walked, then I shall prolong your days. And so understand, he was to walk in the Father's ways and in the Father's laws. So this is why I'm saying he was supposed to keep the Father's ways, he was supposed to keep the Father's laws. And so listen to what the Father says to him in 1 Kings chapter 12. This house which you are building, he says to Shlomo, and the word of Yahuwah came to Shlomo saying, 1 Kings chapter 6 verse 11. And the word of Yahuwah came to Shlomo saying, this house which you are building, if you walk in my laws and do my right rulings, and shall guard my commands and walk in them, then I shall confirm my word with you, which I spoke to your father David, and shall dwell in the midst of the children of Israel, and not forsake my people Israel. But did Shlomo do that? Shlomo started worshipping. He married a lot of other women from other nations, and then he started allowing them to be able to worship their gods on the high places, until eventually Shlomo marries 700 wives. He ends up having 700 wives. And so do you understand why he went astray in the end? And eventually, if you look at some of the words that he writes in Ecclesiastes, which is Shlomo that writes Ecclesiastes, it is very, very sad. And really, we see that Shlomo really fell from where he was. And so if we look at Ecclesiastes right at the end, Shlomo comes to a revelation. And listen to what he says in Ecclesiastes chapter 12. And besides these, my son, be warned. The making of many books has no end, and much study is wearing of the flesh. And this is what people are doing. They just want to read more books and go and write more books and do all these things. But yet the Bible they don't even read. They want to listen to many teachings and carry on with many things. But the Bible they don't even read. And he says, let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Eloah. So what is the first thing that we need to do? Fear Eloah. God His commands. For this applies to all mankind. For Eloah shall bring every work into right ruling, including all that is hidden, whether good or whether evil. So He will fear Eloah. God His commands, for this applies to all mankind. And that is why, if we're going to go to Isaiah, let's go to Isaiah chapter 25, if I can remember correctly. If we go to Isaiah chapter 25, let's see what he turns around. No, chapter 24. And he says, the earth is completely emptied and utterly plundered, for Yahuwah has spoken this word. The earth shall mourn and wither. So we're reading from verse 4 now. The earth shall mourn and wither. The world shall languish and wither. The haughty people of the earth shall languish. For the earth shall be defiled under its inhabitants, because they have transgressed the Torah, changed the law, broken the everlasting covenant. So at the end of the day, this is him speaking here in Isaiah. Therefore, a curse shall consume the earth, and those who dwell in it be punished. Therefore, the inhabitants of the earth shall be burnt, and few men shall be left. And that is already Shlomo speaking, that says, a law, fear Yahuwah, keep His commands, and that is the rule for all mankind. Not only for Israel. So, if I want to finish off with Jeremiah chapter 31, for us to understand this house that needs to become one house. So let us go quickly read Jeremiah chapter 31, so that we understand what the Father is wanting to do here. Jeremiah chapter 31, and if we read from verses 31 to 34, and it says, see, the days are coming, declares Yahuwah, when I shall make a renewed covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah. So you see, the house of Israel and the house of Yehudah, He's going to make a renewed covenant, because they're going to become one house. Not like the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I strengthened their hand to bring them out of the land of Mitzrayim, my covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, declares Yahuwah. For this is the covenant I shall make with the house of Israel. He's not speaking to the house of Judah. This is the covenant that I shall make with the house of Israel. Ephraim, after those days, declares Yahuwah, I shall put my Torah in their inward parts, and write it on their hearts, and I shall be their Eloah, and they shall be my people. So, in the end of the day, the whole house, after Yeshua comes, because this is written in Hebrews chapter 10, verses 16, and this is the word that he wrote, that he speaks in Ezekiel 36, verses 25 to 29. I'm not going to read all of that. And so, this is the word in Hebrews 10, verses 16. This is where it comes. For this is the covenant I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, declares Yahuwah. The house of Israel. Because the house of Judah is keeping Torah. The house of Judah is not. The house of Israel, the house of Judah is keeping Torah, even though they've added many things, so they too need Messiah Yahushua. So the house of Judah need Messiah Yahushua. The house of Israel received Messiah Yahushua, but they don't have Torah. So he says, I shall put Torah in their inward parts, write it on their hearts, and I shall be their Eloah, and they shall be my people. So do you see the two foundations, spirit and truth? grace and instructions, grace and law, grace and instructions, perfect love, one house. And no longer shall they teach each one his neighbor and each one his brother, saying, Know Yahuwah, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares Yahuwah. For I shall forgive their crookedness and remember their sin no more. So there we go. Praise Abba Yahuwah. He's the one who's going to gather the house. And so in Isaiah chapter 56, let's go to Isaiah chapter 56. He's going to gather us, and this is where it's so beautiful in Isaiah 56. He will bring us to his holy mountain. So let us see. This is the promise for all those. And in Isaiah chapter 56, he says, Thus is Yahuwah God right ruling, and do righteousness, for near is my deliverance, Yahushua. For near is my Yahushua to come, and my righteousness to be revealed. This is Yahushua who's coming. Blessed is the man who does this, and the Son of Man who becomes strong in it, guarding the Sabbath, lest he profane it. Guarding the Sabbath, lest he profane it. Guarding his hand from doing any evil. And let not the son of the foreigner who has joined himself to Yahuwah. So what did we do we did the whole teaching of Romans 11 where we grafted in. So it says, has certainly separated me from his people, nor let the eunuch say, Look, I am a dry tree. For thus says Yahuwah. Verse 6, let's see. Also the sons of the foreigner who joined themselves to Yahuwah to serve him, to love the name of Yahuwah, to be his servants, all who guard the Sabbath and not profane it, and are holding on to my covenant, then I shall bring them to my set-apart mountain and let them rejoice in my house of prayer. Their ascending offerings and their slaughterings are accepted on my slaughter place, for my house is called a house of prayer for all the peoples. The Master Yahuwah, who gathers the outcasts of Israel, declares, I gather still others to him besides those who are gathered to him. So you see, those that were the outcasts of the house of Israel, or of the original house, he gathers yet others. Because Yeshua went and bought the field, not only for the treasure that was in the field, the house of Israel, but for all the world that now have the opportunity to come into the fullness of the house. So let us look. I want to finish off with this. For us to understand, what does it mean for us to be able to keep Torah? Why are we returning back to Torah? Why are we reading Torah portions? And this is a dear friend of mine that is on our group, a dear brother that gave me this revelation of when Abba told him to write Torah. So we all see in part. Father said to him, write down Torah. So he wrote down Torah for Torah. And this is what the Father said to him. The T stands for truth. The O stands for oracles. The R stands for righteousness. The A stands for authority. And the H stands for holiness. So this is what the Father told him. So when he was sharing it with me, Father then opened up the whole revelation to me when he said, and this is what the Father revealed to me. You see, the Torah will be revealed when, number one, we start to seek truth. Knock, and the door will be opened. Seek, and you shall find. You will find me when you seek me with your whole heart. If you're not seeking for him, if you're not seeking for truth with your whole heart, you're never going to come to the revelation of the fullness of Torah. Because in Jeremiah chapter 29, let's quickly go to Jeremiah chapter 29. In Jeremiah chapter 29 And we read Jeremiah chapter 29, verses 12, and it says, verse 13, and you shall seek me, and you shall find me when you search for me with all your heart, and I shall be found by you, declares Yahuwah, and I shall turn back your captivity, and shall gather you from all the nations, and from all the places where I have driven you, declares Yahuwah, and I shall bring you back to the place from which I have exiled you. So you see, we have been exiled in the nations, and He will bring us back to the place from where we've been exiled, back to Him, back to His heart, back to His Torah. So that is when we are seeking truth. So we're never going to come to the fullness of Torah if we do not seek truth. Once we truly start to seek truth, that is when He opens up our eyes and gives us the deeper oracles of the revelation of His Word. And so then the truth becomes deeper for us. Our eyes become opened and we receive the oracles of His heart, of His revelation. And then we will understand true righteousness, the righteousness that is in Messiah Yahushua, the righteousness that comes from His right rulings, His precepts, His ordinances, His laws, His commands. That is righteousness. And Yeshua became fullness of that righteousness. And so Yeshua became it so that we can now receive Yeshua and have no excuse now to be lawless, but to walk out His precepts, His ordinances, His laws, and His Torah. And then He gives us His authority. Then we will understand true authority, because authority is not in just authority. Then we have the authority, which is His authority, because we fear Him. We understand we have the authority then that He gives us, and then we have the authority with that word, because why? We are walking in truth. We have the revelation of His oracles. We walk in righteousness, and now we receive true authority that comes from Him. And then we have set apartness, because be set apart as I'm set apart. So then we understand set apartness, and then we become this branch that becomes set apart, which is exactly what Joseph became, set apart. That is what Joseph was to become, set apart. So do you see, Israel needs to return to Torah to become set apart, because he needs to become holy. So that is holiness, set apartness, and that set apartness then brings the fear of Yahuwah. So may Abba Yahuwah bless you all as we return back to the Torah, because the Torah is the first 5 books of this Bible that we are studying at this point in time. And why do we study it? To be able to understand a foundation and to see our Messiah in the Torah. We don't study Torah to gain more wisdom. We study Torah to be able to understand from where we've fallen, to return back to the Father's ways. So may Abba Yahuwah bless you all as we continue to walk out His ways, His precepts, and His ordinances. May Abba bless you, and may we repent from where we have gone astray, and may we return. May Abba Yahuwah bless you all. Shalom, shalom.